corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. I had a lot planned, like every day, a plan to talk about a lot of things, planned to focus on different issues. But today, you look at another shooting, you look at another one of these moments, and you go, it's Monday, it's Tuesday, it's Wednesday, it's another shooting. There have been in excess of 200 of them this year. But when 18 children, elementary school children, 18 are murdered, 3 teachers murdered, it's, as a parent, it's just heartbreaking. And, I saw this and I just, words fail me. So I started looking at some of the statements coming out. And I looked at the 2 senators from Texas, where this horrific tragedy, this horrific murder took place. John Cronin, the senator from Texas. Today, the entire state of Texas is in mourning. Earlier today, a gunman entered an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas, and opened fire, shooting at the Robb Elementary School is every parent and teacher's worst nightmare. No parent, child, or teacher should ever have to wonder whether it's going to be safe to go to school. This is an excruciatingly painful time for this tight-knit community, for all of Texans. My heart goes out to the hospital receiving the care and the loved ones and the loss of their lives that parents can't imagine, blah, blah, blah. I'm in touch with local officials. Okay, great. Plan to travel soon as I can get there. Okay, great. I'm grateful to law enforcement, everyone who worked to stop the shooter, as well as the medical staff. Thank you. It's like it's like this is the, they've got this on speed dial. This is the carbon copy of the last 199, 200s. I join my fellow Texans in lifting up the entire Uvalde community in this unimaginable tragedy. It's like, it's like the carbon copy of the last several. Ted Cruz. Heidi and I are fervently lifting up prayers, lifting up in prayer the children and the families in this horrific shooting. We are in close contact with local officials, but the precise details are still unfolding. Thank you to the heroic law enforcement and first responders for acting so swiftly. Still, hope, thoughts, and prayers. Not going to do anything. Oh no, not going to do anything. Greg Abbott. Texans are grieving for the victims of this senseless crime, and for the community. Cecilia and I mourn this horrific loss and urge all Texans to come together. He's taken action, bold action. He's instructed the Texas Department of Public Safety and the Texas Rangers to work with local law enforcement to fully investigate this crime. The shooter's dead. What are you going to investigate? Ken Paxton from Texas says, we can't stop bad people from doing bad things, but we can potentially arm and prepare and train teachers and other administrators to respond quickly, and that's the best answer in his view. More guns, that's the right answer. Yeah, that's it. We've got 400 million guns in this country. Got more guns than we got people. Guns not the problem? No. We go through this song and dance every time. Democratic Senator Chris Murphy took to the Senate floor. Emotional speech. Tear-jerker speech. What are we doing? Just days after, he says, just days after a shooter walked into a grocery store to gun down African-American patrons, we have another Sandy Hook on our hands. Our kids are living in fear every single time they set foot in the classroom because they think they're going to be next. What are we doing? He says, this isn't inevitable. This isn't inevitable. These kids weren't unlucky. This only happens in this country and nowhere else. Nowhere else do little kids go to school thinking that they might be shot that day. And this is the point. And this is where I come. This is where I come in this moment. It's not inevitable. He's absolutely right. This doesn't happen in other countries around the world. You don't see this in Germany. You don't see daily occurrences of mass shooters. And look, I don't know much about this shooter. I don't care what his name is. Not going to speak his name. His name will not leave my lips. He's a monster. Don't care. I don't want to talk about mental illness because I don't necessarily think mental illness is any greater here than it is anywhere else. But I do know that if you do have people who have mental illness, and I do know that if you have a media culture that riles people up, that shoves outrage candy down their throats at every opportunity, that riles them up and points them in a direction, and then says, here, have a gun, have a weapon, bad things are going to happen. 18 children, 3 teachers are dead. Do I care why he did it? No. Do I care how an 18-year-old got these weapons of death? Yeah. Are we gonna investigate that? No. No, that's not what we're going to investigate. We're going to focus on the 18-year-old. We're going to find a flaw. We're going to find some kind of rationale. No, he must have been crazy. When the reality is bullets killed these kids. Bullets came out of guns. And we go through this song and dance every time this happens, where the gun fanatics, the fetishists, it's not the guns. Guns don't kill people. People do. But the guns make it a lot easier. And we have legislators who continue to do what they do. And I look at the person who represents the district where this school is, Republican Representative Tony Gonzalez, who tweeted out in the most religious of ways, in the most God-fearing, proselytizing, Christian, preachy kind of way. He tweeted out, Jesus said, let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such of these. Let's pray together. Almost some kind of weird little calling, actually. Like it's almost natural. Yes, let the children that have just been executed for going to school come. Yes, this was preordained some weird little way. We made sure that they were born solely so they could be clay pigeons for some screwed up gun nut. Because we care about the fetuses, but somehow we're not going to do anything to protect them while they're alive. And I say this because Gonzalez, while tweeting out his weird little religion back in March of 2021, he was proud as punch, man. He tweeted out, I voted no on 2 gun control measures in the House today, and I am a proud supporter of the Second Amendment and will do everything I can to oppose gun grabs from the far left. Here's the thing, nobody's grabbing anyone's guns. But there's got to be some sanity. There's got to be some bit of rationale. The Republican Party used to be, some bit of sanity. There used to be something there. There used to be something about responsibility and accountability. It's not there anymore. The gun people that the NRA people I used to know, they were about responsibility and accountability. They understood the awesomeness of that right, that Second Amendment right. And now it's turned into this cult kind of movement to where now the people in power who are responsible for this. I argue that for every one of these shootings, the people in our elected offices who continue to do nothing, the Tony Gonzaleses, the Ted Cruzes, the John Cronin's, the Joe Manchins, the Pat Toomeys, all of these people who have stood in the way of sane, rational gun laws. These are the murderers. They're the co-murderers. And I think, we've got to stop couching this in nice terms. Thoughts and prayers, sorry, done. It's time for action. And the longer it takes to get to some action, to get something done, just means that it's going to happen again. And I know, well, we can't stop bad people from doing bad things, Rick. No, you can't do that. Again, the Founding Fathers never, when they wrote the Second Amendment, never imagined that you could have the weapons that we have today. Could have never imagined it. Could have never imagined we could have the efficient killing machines that we have today in the palms of our hands. Could have never imagined it. If they could have, do you think they would have said, yeah, we want every Tom, Dick, and Harry to have one? We want every person to have something that can wipe out 18 children and 3 teachers on any given morning. Do you think that's what the vision was? Absolutely not. And we've got elected leaders because of the moneyed interests. And this is where, in having conversations with rational people, everyone I know believes in gun control. Everybody I know. It's just a matter of where you draw the line. Some people are a little bit further to drawing the line than even I'm comfortable with. But we can't seem to have any bit of discussion or debate in this country because the gun lobby and the fetishists of the NRA have got such a firm control and firm grip on policy that our children are the ones being sacrificed. And it's interesting to me that there's a movement, and this is where I'm reaching out to those pro-life people, because this is your moment to prove. This is that moment to prove that you live up to what you preach. If you care about the fetus, you care about that child being born, how about caring about their lives? Instead of just saying, hey, we care about them until they get popped out, and then, hey, well, we just created little clay pigeons for the next gun fetishist to go pick off in the next elementary school. Because there's going to be a next one. And a next one. And it could be your kid's school. It could be my kid's school. And I blame those people in power. I blame those elected officials who have done nothing but give us rhetoric, but give us thoughts and prayers and throw Bible verses at us. Action. Do something. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. Also, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Or is it hopeless? Is this just the America that we live in? If you want to feel safe, go somewhere else. We're a gun country, damn it. Learn how to run fast. Is that the motto? 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. Back after this. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments. and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
At some point, maybe there'll be some sanity. I'm just frustrated. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Let's get Alice on line one. Hey, Alice, what's on your mind?
Well, I only have this to say. I wonder how long the thoughts and prayers would exist without any action if it were a religious school that got shot up, or, maybe the state legislature or something equally amusing, or even for that matter, how about when they have their little Republican hideaway where they go and strategize?
Well, what's interesting is the NRA is having their convention in Houston this weekend.
I know, isn't that something? You know, my dad was a lifelong member of the NRA until the 80s. And then my dad actually stopped being a member. He said they were going crazy, and boy, was he right.
Yeah, right around the time George H.W. Bush left the NRA, is right around the time they went. And look, you know, I had respect for H.W. Bush. I didn't vote for him, didn't necessarily like him, but I had respect for him. But it was right around that time when the Republican Party really started going off the deep end, and you started to seeing the fringe groups, the Pat Buchanans and the dog whistle take over the party. And this all coincides with it.
Yeah, and you know, it's just insane that these people have the nerve, the absolute nerve, to say, "Oh, it's Jesus' will that he got his hands on a gun and went in there and shot up a school and sent the little kids home." Pro-life, my foot. It's called, "Hey, we want to control you. Have some kids." But you have a good evening.
Thanks, Alice. Appreciate it. No, I mean, this is one of those moments where it's heartbreaking, it's angering, it's frustrating. And I think the right response in this moment is not I feel such rage in this moment. Now look, these weren't my kids. I didn't know any of them. But these were our kids. This was our nation's children. And thoughts and prayers, not the response, not anymore. No, those days long over. And you know, like I could go through there are a ton of representatives who've gone through this. Oh, you know, hey, I voted against the gun bills, and I voted to protect your rights to have have the arsenal and no controls. Now, will this investigation that Greg Abbott is looking for, will it find how this kid got a hold of all this stuff, how this murderer got all this stuff? Will it hold anybody accountable for this person getting a hold of this stuff if it was done illegally? Probably not, because we don't do that. Or if you're able to find out. It's just one of those. There are very few days where I'm at a loss for words. Today's one of those. Today's one of those days where it's just the anger and the rage of this moment. because our political system is so broken. And it's because we're broken. It's us too. We're responsible for this because we don't demand leaders to actually listen to what we want done. And we don't stand up to the vocalist minority. Anyway, I'm watching a clip over at the F channel, and I've never been a fan of this Jesse Waters. I don't think he's particularly interesting or good. Bill O'Reilly was at least somewhat good at his job, somewhat entertaining, and able to watch. This he's just not. It looks like he's reading everything poorly, even when he's trying to be off the cuff. And I was watching this segment with him and this woman who was really very good. I can't pronounce her name. Some opinion editor over at the Newsweek. She was railing about how American journalists are part of the elite. They're rich. This is a woman who's a millionaire. She's loaded, and she's railing on journalists. Now she's the editor. Again, there's the hierarchy. The journalist, sends stuff to her. She's the editor. She's like above them, but she's railing on them how they're rich and how they're part of the elite and how they don't understand what the poor working class. And they're going on this whole really great performative journey on standing up for working class values, and it was kind of amazing. And the chyron at the bottom said, "Welcome to Biden's America: open borders, violent streets, and no baby formula." And I'm going, how do those all go together? Oh yeah, you're just supposed to be angry. It's feeding you outrage. But at the end of it, this Jesse Waters is talking about, it's about he was stumbling over the word class because they're really trying to pivot to be the voice of working class values, because they're really trying to switch this narrative that they're now the champions of workers, that they now kind of like the Business Roundtable. Now we've come to this epiphany that we care about workers, we care about consumers, we care about communities, no longer about shareholders and creating wealth. It's no longer that. We care about these other things. No, trust us, checks in the mail. So I'm watching this, and it's just great piece of political theater. And she's fabulous, man. She's just, ranting and raving. And when you know her background, the daughter of a neurosurgeon, and you went to a private school, and just railing about how, public schools, and railing about, how your kids are struggling, and you can't get baby formula, and how life's expensive, and just ranting like she actually knows what it's like to miss a meal. Like she actually knows what it's like to miss a rent payment. Not. But really, convincing. I would have given her an Oscar. And then they panned over to him, and he's stumbling over the punchline. Come on, keep up with it, deliver. And he just couldn't. And it's one of these moments where you go, they're trying so hard to convince the working class of this country that they care. After all of these years of being the voice of corporate America, and have basically, spun them this web of, let corporate America do whatever you don't need government. It's just interesting to watch this performance. But I got lots to get to today. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, our good friend Scott Paul is going to be here. Some interesting stuff coming out of Taiwan and China I want to get into. Also, some of your thoughts. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1959. That was the day Operation Humanity marched in support of New York City hospital workers fighting for union recognition and bargaining rights at area voluntary hospitals. Workers organizing with Local 1199 had been on strike since May 8th and called on the public to support them in their efforts. They pointed out that the 30,000 overwhelmingly black and Latino workers were fighting against against economic exploitation and discrimination. Striking workers condemned their paltry wages, which averaged $21 less a week than workers at city hospitals. They added they had no job security or benefits and were not even eligible for unemployment. The Central Labor Council, the NAACP, and area civil rights activists all supported the march. In their book, Upheaval in the Quiet Zone, Leon Fink and Brian Greenberg note that a union largely led by Jews had squared off against hospitals directed by the scions of the city's Jewish community, to the degree that it was a family affair. The 1959 fight thus took on the bitterness of a civil war. As well, Catholic trade union leaders decried the anti-union fervor of hospitals run by the Archdiocese. Fink and Greenberg illustrate the support of fiery Mike Quill, president of TWU Local 100, who denounced hospital trustees as worse than famed segregationist Governor Orville Faubus of Arkansas. Weeks into the strike, area trade unions supplied reinforcements in the form of donations, loans, and groceries. Local IBEW members assessed themselves $1 a week for the strikers. Many unions regularly joined picket lines in support. Though the strike would fail to secure union recognition and collective bargaining rights, there were minimal gains. Solidarity galvanized the membership for future battles. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Right before our eyes, an invaluable American species is fast disappearing from view. Cartoonus americanus. These are newspaper cartoonists who've long delighted readers and infuriated power elites. And there's nothing natural about their sudden decline. It's not the result of a dwindling talent pool, and certainly not due to a lack of political targets. Rather, what's happening is that their media habitat is being intentionally destroyed. Around the start of the 20th century, some 2,000 newspapers featured their own full-time cartoonists. But in just the last decade, those healthy media environments have shriveled. So now, only a couple of dozen newspapers have these vibrant artistic journalists on staff. One major reason is that most U.S. papers have been gobbled up by profiteering hedge funds that have merged, purged, and plundered these essential local sources of news and democratic discourse. The overriding interest of these Wall Street owners is to cash out a paper's financial assets and haul off the booty to boost their personal wealth. Journalism and democracy be damned. Thus, they view cartoonists as a paycheck that can be easily diverted into their corporate pockets, dismissing the fact that enjoying good local cartoonists ranks as one of the top reasons people give for buying the paper. Note that this mass extermination is not old-school media censorship, but sleight-of-hand money censorship by the new monopolistic order of newspapering. Political cartoonists are still free to express any opinion they want, but the Wall Street system locks them out of their primary marketplace. Censorship is ugly, but eliminating paychecks, well, that's just business. This is Jim Hightower saying, yet these freewheeling spirits of the cartooning craft are inventing new ways to connect with America's strong demand for their fun and important work. To connect with them, go to editorialcartoonist.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it's been an interesting couple of days of listening to the right wing lose their mind over the fact that President Biden actually said something. I think a lot of us have been thinking about what's going on in China and Taiwan, kind of a reset. And I've been talking about this for years. I mean, this idea that at some point you gotta figure out the policy going forward and defending Taiwan. I've been asking for years, are we going to do what Eisenhower did back in the 50s, or are you going to let the Chinese roll over them? And look, I'm happy the president, whether it was a gaffe or not, or is him just saying, you know what, I'm going to say it out loud, good for him. And I know there are people who are going, hey, we're gonna try and walk this back, soften it, but he said it, and I think it was the right thing. It was a message to be sent. But here to share some thoughts on where we are with what's going on in Taiwan. And also, there's a lot of talk about lifting the Trump tariffs and backpedaling on that. And what I find most interesting about this is even conservative groups, while they're against tariffs and say tariffs are horrible and they raise prices, even they're saying, going to do nothing on the inflation front. They're just ideologically opposed to them regardless, still going to do nothing on the inflation front. But here to share some thoughts on, well, what should be done, I've asked our good friend Scott Paul to come talk with us. Scott is the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, their website. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, it's good to be with you, although I wish the national circumstances were a whole lot better than they are tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible to have almost any other conversation when you have 18 children murdered, 3 teachers murdered, and we don't know if that's going to be the final count or not, because the reports are there were more children and teachers taken to the hospital. Again, our hopes are with them, but our fury and our anger pointed directly at our elected leaders for their continual failure, or at least my fury and anger pointed at them for that.
That's right. And look, I just, the president, as you indicated, had just spent some time in Asia, and he's due back in Washington tonight. He may have just landed, actually, and is obviously dealing with this this tragedy. The other issues that you mentioned remain and are really important to our future. And the point that you raised up, Rick, about Taiwan is interesting, because this is the third time that Biden has said over the course of his presidency that he would defend Taiwan, have the U.S. forces defend Taiwan if it was to be invaded by the Chinese Communist Party and its military. So 3 times, hard to call those gaffes, right? I mean, that sounds like he's developing a new policy, even if they say they're going to walk it back. But I think the important thing is how do you realize this? How do you make it more than rhetoric? And that's going to take a couple of things. I mean, first of all, hopefully the Taiwanese military has learned a lot from what's happened with Ukraine and Russia, and the way in which Ukraine has defended its country. And I think there's some valuable lessons there about what works, what doesn't work. I think second, and this is also from a military perspective, I mean, if we're offering this guarantee, we need to make sure we have the capabilities, and our allies in that region have the capabilities too to live up to that commitment. Which means developing some deeper relationships in the Indo-Pacific, and also ensuring that we have the capacity to surge up some protection if we need to. But last, and I think this is in some ways perhaps the most important thing. One of the dangers of a China-Taiwan conflict is the economic damage that could produce around the world, including the impact that it could have on us in the United States. And if you don't know how dependent we are on China right now for stuff, you would certainly at the advent of some potential conflict.
Right.
And we've seen bits and pieces of that already, right? Over the last couple of years. And that would just be, you increase that exponentially by about 100. And that's where we would be at, which is why kind of realigning our supply chains, getting some of that production back is so important. And it seems like a boring conversation to have, quite honestly. Who wants to talk about supply chains? But if we don't get this right, we lose a lot of moves on the chessboard as we look ahead, and we put ourselves in a diminished capacity to support democracy and freedom in that region.
Yeah, and if we let them take over Taiwan, Scott, how dependent then? How much more dependent are we then on China? This is the other part. People are going, well, what business is it of ours? What do we care about Taiwan? You go, well, we're dependent on them as well. So if we allow the Chinese to take over Taiwan, we become that much more dependent on China. So our interests are kind of all balled up in all of this.
Absolutely, they are, and I think that's the key. That's the key thing here. And yeah, you're right. You do get that criticism, like, well, what has China done to us, really, right? And because it's not this overt kind of in your face military aggression, it's much more subversive than that in a lot of ways, and um, it is, they're crippling a lot of our economic opportunity because of their own economic policies, and that's created an incredible amount of disruption inside the United States, in our politics, in our communities, in our capabilities. And so there is a concern, and the way in which they've scaled this up is through just blatant theft and piracy. I
Yep.
mean, that's kind of how it's happened. I wish I could say otherwise, and I think Chinese people are very hardworking. I don't have a quarrel with Chinese culture or Chinese people. I have a quarrel with the government and its policies, and the need to push back on that. And that's why I'm glad, like Ambassador Catherine Tai, our U.S. Trade Ambassador, who is Asian American, said, "Look, I can speak to this from a position of authority. I am an Asian American. I don't like the way a lot of people talk about this, but I view this through a policy lens, and we need to have a tough policy on China."
In looking at this, over the weekend, obviously the president came out with this, what I viewed as kind of a Trans-Pacific Partnership light, this new Asian Pacific economic bloc that they want to put together with us, India, Japan, South Korea, Australia, Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, New Zealand, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. What they're saying is 40% of the world's economy, and kind of an economic agreement, not a trade deal, but kind of in a world economic agreement, kind of building the things I think you're talking about, kind of a cooperation agreement to where, if China gets out of hand, maybe you have some way to work with others to kind of pull them back in the line with the rest of the international community. I think it's a smart move.
Yeah, yeah, I do as well. And obviously, it will be important to get the details right on this. But we know a couple of things are off the table. And one of those is increased market access to the United States directly through lowering tariff or investment barriers. Because, they tried that. You just pointed out the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would have gotten defeated in the Congress under the Obama administration. And then the Trump administration withdrew from it. But that was an agreement that would have cost us factory jobs. And even the supporters' assessment of that agreement admitted it would cost factory jobs. They thought it was worth it anyway because of the diplomatic ties and kind of, hedging against China. But it's not a good agreement if we're going to diminish our manufacturing capacity. It's a terrible idea. And so I have hope that this is on the right track. And part of the reason why I have hope is that at least this administration has closely consulted with the labor movement on this. And so if this is like, for instance, a US-Mexico-Canada deal, which did have market access, so it's different in a way, but if it helps to lift up worker standards, that's something that's good, because some of those countries need to have worker standards lifted up, and make sure that they're enforced. And we do need the cooperation of these nations with respect to climate goals. So I think this could be an important step forward. And I'm glad, and it shouldn't be modeled on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That would be a terrible idea, even though there's some Democrats, some Republicans who counseled Biden to do that.
Yeah, I saw it more as an economic version of NATO. Since we're
it's a good comparison.
With China, we're fighting kind of an economic war. I saw this as kind of a cooperation agreement, that we're all going to play by certain set of rules. We're all going to come together and ensure that we all play by the same set of rules and hold others accountable. At least that's my view on it. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Scott Paul. Scott is the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, their website, talking about what's going on in Taiwan, China, the president's most recent comments, and where he's going to be going. Now, there are some, Scott, who in the administration who have outwardly kind of pushed to doing away with the Trump tariffs. You and I have agreed that the tariffs, while not perfect, need to stay because I don't think they're going to do anything to help inflation. In fact, a lot of right-wing commentators don't think it's going to do anything on the inflation front, but they're against them anyway because ideologically they're against, well, anything like that. In fact, one of the groups, pointed out that this PIIE group, this PIE estimate said that it would only 1.3% percentage points. If we were to end all tariffs, inflation would fall by 1.3%. And when you're looking at 8.3% inflation rate, not much of a movement, especially when you're looking at, food prices and energy prices are where the inflation is, not what the Chinese are dumping here. So it wouldn't help us hardly at all, if at anything, but it would help the Chinese. This is a bad idea, and I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah. And first of all, it's worth. I've had a long association with knowing work that the Peterson Institute for International Economics has done on trade, and two of the scholars there predicted NAFTA would add 200,000 jobs to the American economy. So they later, Rick, and not surprisingly, had to admit that they were wrong about it, and that they would stop making predictions, which of course they didn't do. They kept making predictions. And so I think even our trade ambassador, Catherine Tai, called this Peterson Institute piece on tariffs and inflation, even though it's a pretty low estimate. She still said it's somewhere between fiction and an interesting academic exercise. So she's even discounting that possibility. And if you look at what's in core inflation right now, what is causing it? Airline tickets, gas prices, food. None of this stuff has anything whatsoever to do with China tariffs. None of it. And so if it wouldn't have any net effect for the consumer at the end of the day. But what it would do is take a tool out of our toolbox when we're trying to lessen our dependency on goods that are made in China, particularly goods that are critical to national security, and bring some of it back here. And if some of it has to go elsewhere, that will happen. But we're trying to get those supply chains as much as we possibly can out of China. So if you're going to lower tariffs on Chinese products, that's going to have the opposite effect. Companies are going to double down on their made in China production, which would be a huge mistake. And so, this will be, it's not surprising that there's this battle within the Democratic Party. It always happens, right? And this time it's like Janet Yellen and some of the former Obama folks are on the, lower the tariff side. And then you have, Catherine Tai and some others saying, we got to keep the tariffs. And so I think that, on balance, I think Biden is going to want to keep many of these because they realize it would be, I guess, what I would call inflation fighting theater, right? It gives the appearance of doing something, but it really doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
But then you lose this move on the chessboard with China and trying to both realign our supply chains and also counter some of their economic strategies as well, which have been so damaging to our interests over the last couple of
And
decades.
if you look around the world, I mean, the inflation rates in countries around the world, I mean, we don't really care. We don't seem to care about any other country, and our news doesn't actually cover it, and voters don't actually look around the world. But we're not really all that bad off when you start looking around.
That's right.
The rest of the world and food prices and energy prices. We've actually got it pretty good. I mean, not great. I mean, things aren't fabulous. And there are a lot of reasons for that. And I would argue consolidation, corporate greed, deregulation of the last administration. There's a lot of reasons for it. But I would argue Joe Biden ain't one of them.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. But Biden is not one of them. The tariffs are not one of them either, because certainly, I mean, other countries haven't necessarily put those up on Chinese products as well. And so, the theory, I think, would be they would have lower inflation than the U.S., but in some cases they have much higher inflation. I think ultimately we're going to come out of this in a reasonably good place. It's going to take a while, like bringing a lot of this production online. Like, you can't just add water, pour and stir a semiconductor factory into existence.
You sure?
Yeah.
You just can't snap your fingers and voila, there's a 5 million square foot building to make chips.
It takes a little work to do that, and it takes a year or two, and so, or more actually, but it'll be worth it once we get it done. And so, I mean, all of that's still pending in the Congress, though. This kind of investment that would go to scale up some manufacturing in the United States, and it's more important than ever. We got to get this back. We lost so much of it overseas.
Here again, it's the dysfunction in our leadership. It's a dysfunction in our halls of Congress, so that we can't get things done. And again, I come back to us. Put down the divisions. Put down the things that they use to divide us, and get into those halls of power and demand that we build factories, we reshore our manufacturing, we create jobs at home, we create educational and economic opportunities for ourselves and our families. That's the way forward. That's the path. That's the path to righteousness, my religious folk. At least that's my thought. But Scott, as always, great stuff. Keep up the great work. I can't wait to have you back again.
You bet, Rick. Thanks so much for having me on tonight. Be well. Take care.
Good stuff. Our good friend Scott Paul. Make sure you check out the work that they do at the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, their website. We'll get links out on social media. You can check out the stuff that they do. But again, these tariffs, even you got the Peterson Institute saying it's not going to do anything, but we're against them anyway, so we should do it because, well, we're invested in this stuff. It's our ideology. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show for working people. That's all. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1949. That was the day that a shotgun blast broke through a closed window and struck Victor Reuther as he sat reading a newspaper in his living room. Victor, along with his brothers Walter and Roy, were leaders of the United Auto Workers Union, one of the most powerful forces of the 20th century U.S. labor movement. During the 1930s, the three brothers moved to Detroit and became involved in the hard-fought efforts to bring unions to the Motor City. Victor got a job at the Kesley Hayes Wheel Company. He joined UAW Local 174. During the Flint sit-down strike against General Motors, Victor gave speeches to help rally the strikers. According to Mike Smith of Wayne State University, Victor, quote, had this deep resonating voice. He coupled that with a superb control of the language. And when he got up to give a speech, it was usually a beauty. Victor would go on to become the UAW's education director and international director. Roy took up the role of legislative director. Walter became the union's president. Their union leadership made many enemies for the three Reuther brothers. Walter was the victim of a gunshot attack in 1948 that permanently injured one of his arms. The next year, an unknown would-be assassin took aim at Victor. The blast hit Victor in the face. He lost his right eye, and the bullet smashed his jaw and collarbone. In his memoir, Victor wrote that he told the surgeon, quote, "They can take out my eye and take of an arm or a leg, but please fix up my tongue. I've got a living to make." Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
I was standing by gate 4 when I heard the people roar. They ain't gonna kick the auto workers around. It's that UAW-CIO.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
When you look at on the manufacturing front, it is most certainly something that, I've been saying for years, we have got to reclaim manufacturing in this country, bring back our manufacturing prowess. And I always point to that bridge in Trenton, New Jersey. There's a bridge that on the side of it, they've got big lights, Trenton makes, the world takes. And that used to be true for 100 years. We were the manufacturer of the globe for 100 years. And we didn't have these supply chain issues so much because we made stuff here. A lot of our problems right now, can't get stuff off boats. That's the problem. Can't get parts from other places of the world because our supply chains are so spread out. So factories shut down because, hey, we can't get the widget that we need for the whatnot to put into the how-to what over there. And it's causing problems. And yet there hasn't been the kind of urgency that I would have liked to have seen. And I still want to see it. We should be reshoring our manufacturing at an alarming rate. The world is resetting. You look at what's going on in Russia. You look at what's going on in China. China believes they're going to be the superpower of the next 100 years. They believe nothing's going to stand in their way. And manufacturing is that way forward. If you don't make your stuff, if you don't have the ability to build and maintain your power, you don't have any power. That's the part of this. And now, I do find it interesting. The president did say, like Scott Paul said 3 times, he has made the comments about Taiwan. If you don't make your war machine, if you don't create the parts, if you need the magnets from China to make your smart bombs smart, if you need the chips from Taiwan to make your armaments, if you need those things that someone else makes, are you really that superpower? And this is the conversation we need to be having on what unites us. Because, and I remember having these conversations back during the Tea Party years. This was something the Tea Party agreed with. And why I said to my labor friends back then, you need to be getting involved in these Tea Party movements and getting these people on board with the policies that we agree with. Reshoring manufacturing being front and center, because that was the beginning of a lot of this anger, a lot of this really extreme stuff, because those communities that these folks were in, because this was the outlet for their anger. This was a place to express outrage. And to it was like their outraged church. It gave them the opportunity to commune with other people who were just as angry. And labor missed that moment, missed that opportunity, and really, really should have taken advantage of it, because you could have pushed harder. Because we need to build stuff. Not just because you need the factories, but you need the jobs. You need the mental capacity. We have a brain drain problem. We have a generation or two that we've lost of tinkerers and people who learned to take chunks of this and turn it into some finished product. We need to reclaim that. And this is that moment. Coming out of the pandemic, this is that moment. I think the younger generation gets this. I think they understand that we need to, as I've been saying for 17 years doing this, domestic production for domestic consumption. Didn't just make that up. I've meant that all these years. Because in a pandemic, what can you do? When you need more PPE, when you need more masks and gowns and things to protect people, you can ramp up production. You don't have to wait for a ship to come in. You don't have to wait for someone else to go, you know what, we've got enough for ourselves. We'll send you someone, we've got enough. They're never going to have enough. You need to have your own production. This is that moment. This is where we have to have elected leaders who understand that. And sadly, we don't. Because we got too many right-wing think tanks and even some left ones. We're saying, no, we need to be integrated with trade, and we need to whip a little trade on them so that they're our friends. And we need to have open borders for trade so that, because trading countries don't war. I think we've proven that wrong. I think we've proven that a bit wrong. Because I'm still trying to figure out how China's going to feed themselves. I'm still trying to figure out with what's going on in Ukraine, how Europe's going to feed themselves. And Germany's worried as well. Because the breadbasket of Europe, it ain't happening. If you missed any of today's program, ricksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. Make sure you check it out on your favorite apps. Like, share, subscribe, make a comment. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people from the top.
Australians have chosen A government that will act on climate change.
Big win for climate and living things in Australia's national elections. Global warming made record South Asia heatwave more likely and much worse. Plus, grid regulator warns most of the U.S. is at risk of blackouts this summer.
Oh, fantastic. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.
AP News. I'm Ed Donahue. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says the 18-year-old gunman who shot and killed 19 children and 2 adults at an elementary school